Welcome to Valmiki Ramayan in English. Let's meet the creator behind it all, Dr. T.K. Bansal. What's so amazing is that he's a blind scientist from the University of Oxford, and he is on a pretty ambitious mission. Basically, he's presenting this ancient story for a whole new generation. He's taking the classic Valmiki Ramayan and turning it into modern English videos.
The whole point is just to make this incredible story accessible to literally everyone.
And you know what? This is actually where you can help out.
It's really simple to support the project. Just like the videos, share, and subscribe.
Seriously, every little bit of engagement helps this amazing vision reach more people.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us for today's deep dive. We've got something truly spectacular lined up for you today.
We really do.
We're traveling far back in time. We're going to look at the blueprints of what might just be the ultimate ancient utopian city.
Yeah, and we are pulling our insights directly from translated excerpts of the ancient Sanskrit epic.
Right, the Valmiki Ramayana.
Exactly. Specifically, we're exploring the Balakanda,
And we're going to be looking really closely at Sargas 5, 6, and 7.
which is just a phenomenal, incredibly dense piece of source material to explore.
Absolutely.
And for those of you listening, it is so crucial to understand the absolute weight this epic carries in its cultural context.
Not just a story.
Right. It isn't just a fictional story or a casual bedtime tale. It's categorized as a great historical epic poem, one that essentially grants its listeners the 4 primary goals of life, according to the ancient tradition.
Let's break those down for the listener really quickly, just because they frame everything we are about to discuss today.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So the 4 goals are dharma, which is righteousness, cosmic order, or duty.
Right.
Then there's artha, meaning wealth, economic prosperity, or purpose.
Okay.
Kama, which is human desire and pleasure. And finally, moksha.
Which is the ultimate spiritual liberation.
Exactly. So the stakes, the scale of the society we were analyzing today, they are incredibly high.
Because the epic is presenting a world where all 4 of these massive, often conflicting goals are perfectly balanced.
Perfectly balanced.
And our mission today is to thoroughly explore how that balance was supposedly achieved.
We are going to look at the urban blueprint of this city,
Ayodhya.
right, Ayodhya, and examine the leadership, the military, the citizens, and the intricate administration of its ruler, King Dasharatha.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the sheer physical scale and the infrastructure of the city itself.
Because Sarga 5 goes into incredible, mind-boggling detail about its dimensions.
It really does.
So the epic places Ayodhya in the Grand Kosala Kingdom. This is right on the banks of the Sarayu River.
And Valmiki tells us that the city was originally built and established by the deity Manu himself.
Which immediately gives it this divine foundational pedigree. But then we get to the actual dimensions.
Yeah, the translation states the city was 12 yohanas long and 3 yohanas wide.
Right.
Give me some context there. What exactly is a yohana in modern terms?
Okay.
Because ancient measurements can be notoriously vague.
They can be, yeah. But even by the most conservative historical estimates, a single yohana translates to roughly 8 miles.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
So 12 yohanas long, we are talking about a city that is roughly 100 miles long.
100 miles long.
That isn't just a big ancient city, that is an urban sprawl the size of the greater Los Angeles area.
Exactly.
Or like driving a massive stretch of the I-5 in California, but built entirely in the ancient world.
That is exactly the scale you should be picturing. It's a sprawling, massive metropolis.
Well,
And the urban planning described in the blueprints is incredibly deliberate for a space that massive.
it's not just chaotic growth.
Not at all. There were wide, spacious highways that connected the city to other regions. And these weren't just, compacted dirt roads worn down by cartwheels.
Right.
They were clearly defined grids, lined on both sides with diverse, meticulously planted trees.
And the maintenance, the translation points out that these massive highways were sprinkled with water every single day.
Just to keep the dust down.
Yeah. And beautifully, they were constantly strewn with blooming flowers.
It's amazing.
It paints a picture of a civilization that prioritizes aesthetics and public comfort just as much as basic function.
Well, you don't lay down flowers on 100 miles of highway unless you have immense wealth.
That's true.
And a massive labor force dedicated simply to keeping the city beautiful.
Right. And I found the specific zoning details fascinating, too. It outlines distinct, highly organized markets. There were massive armories where all sorts of complex weapons and machinery were stored.
And the whole urban center was buffered by lush gardens, mango orchards, and dense forests of tall sal trees.
But honestly, my favorite detail, the one that really grounds this in reality for me, is the municipal water supply.
Oh, the drinking water.
Yes, the epic claims the public drinking water was so pristine and delicious, it tasted as sweet as sugarcane juice.
It's such a vivid detail. It really highlights the absolute environmental abundance of the region.
It really does.
What's fascinating here is the literal translation of the name Ayodhya itself.
Oh, right.
Because in Sanskrit, it is explicitly pointed out that Ayodhya means a city that is unconquerable.
Unconquerable.
It translates to a place against which it is absolutely impossible to wage war.
And the architecture of the city reflects that tension perfectly.
Completely.
That is such a great point. It is the ultimate paradox of beauty and brawn.
Yes.
Because on one hand, you have these incredibly beautiful, gem-studded, towering palaces.
The verses actually compare them to mountain peaks.
Exactly. They were so magnificent that the city rivaled Amaravati, the heavenly city of the thunder god Indra.
You've got theaters run entirely by women, 7-story mansions, and golden facades everywhere you look.
But on the other hand, the moment you look past the flowers and the gold, you realize it is an absolute, impenetrable fortress.
All of that beauty was protected by intense, heavy militarization.
Right.
Surrounding those gem-studded palaces was a deep, uncrossable moat. And the city walls weren't just stone.
They were mounted with heavy artillery.
The translation specifically names weapons called shatagnis,
Which literally translates to
100 killers.
100 killers. So we aren't just talking about guys with bows and arrows here.
Not at all. These were massive, heavy projectile weapons.
Wow.
Essentially ancient cannons or ballistas designed to wipe out massive numbers of invaders in a single volley.
It's basically a billionaire's paradise wrapped inside a maximum security military bunker.
That's like a great way to put it.
But, you know, it's one thing to have a massive moat and ancient cannons, but a fortress is only as strong as the people guarding the walls.
Very true.
Who were the soldiers actually manning these 100-killer weapons?
So Sarga 5 introduces us to the elite guard. They were called the Maharathis.
Okay.
These were not your average conscripted foot soldiers. The epic numbers them in the thousands, and their skill level borders on the superhuman.
In what way?
Well, for instance, they were complete masters of a technique called Shabdapeti.
Wait, shooting purely by tracking sound.
Yes.
That sounds like echolocation or something out of a comic book. Are we talking about mythological magic here, or a highly exaggerated martial art?
It is presented as a highly refined, almost spiritual martial art. It implies a sensory focus so extreme that visual sight becomes secondary.
Wow.
If an enemy snapped a twig in the pitch black of night, a Maharathi could put an arrow through them.
That is terrifying.
And their physical strength matched their precision. The text notes they routinely took down fierce, roaring lions, tigers, and wild boars in the dense forests.
Sometimes using sharp weapons, but often relying on just the raw power of their bare hands.
Yep.
So you have this incredibly lethal, highly trained, almost superhuman fighting force capable of immense violence. Here's where it gets really interesting.
They didn't just kill indiscriminately.
No, they had extremely strict rules of engagement.
Yes, their moral code was just as rigid, if not more so, than their military training.
Despite being perfectly capable of mass destruction, these warriors absolutely refused to shoot certain types of targets under any circumstances.
The epic is very specific about this. They would not strike anyone who was alone or separated from their group.
They also wouldn't fire upon anyone who was without family,
Right.
specifically detailing that they wouldn't shoot a man who lacked a father or a son to carry on his lineage.
And perhaps most surprisingly, for a fearsome ancient military force, they flat out refused to attack anyone who was fleeing or retreating from battle.
If we really analyze that, it is a crucial point for understanding the entire culture of Ayodhya.
It is. What we are looking at is essentially an ancient, highly spiritualized version of the Geneva Conventions.
Yep.
The text is defining what true strength actually means. It's arguing that ultimate power is not defined just by the capacity for immense violence, but by the extreme moral restraint placed upon that violence.
That is a profound way to look at it. To have the absolute ability to destroy an enemy, but to hold your fire because that enemy is vulnerable, alone, or running away.
It takes far more discipline than just pulling a trigger.
Precisely. It is the mark of a truly superior warrior class. It completely flips the script on the modern assumption that ancient armies were just ruthless, barbaric hordes.
It really does.
And what's wild is that this culture of restraint and perfection trickles all the way down from the very top of the hierarchy.
Because in Sarga 6, the blueprints shift focus.
Right, giving us a really close look at the ruler, King Dasharatha, and the everyday citizens of this utopia.
King Dasharatha is given the title of Atirathi.
Okay.
In the military taxonomy of the era, an Atirathi is a warrior so tactically and physically skilled that he is capable of fighting 10,000 other warriors all by himself.
Okay, logistically, how does that even work? One guy against 10,000.
It's hard to imagine.
Are we talking about a literal battlefield scenario where he's just fighting a horde? Or is this a metaphor for his tactical genius as a general?
It functions as both. It's a symbol of his divine-level prowess and his commanding presence.
Got it.
He is compared to deities like Indra and Kubera in terms of his raw power and vast wealth, but the crucial caveat is how he applies that power.
Right. Because he isn't a tyrant.
Not at all.
Despite having the power to crush anyone, Valmiki makes it very clear that Dasharatha was deeply loved by his people.
He ruled with the protective, fatherly care of the ancient deity Manu.
He was farsighted, completely in control of his own senses and desires, and totally dedicated to the welfare of the realm.
And the economic result of that leadership is a standard of living for the citizens that is almost hard to comprehend.
The wealth described in Ayodhya is absolute and universal.
The epic goes out of its way to emphasize that every single person in the city was rich and content.
There wasn't a single household that lacked an abundance of excellent goods, cattle, horses, or grain.
It's the physical adornments that really hammer this point home, though.
Yeah, the translation makes these sweeping, specific claims.
It says absolutely no one in the city was without earrings, crowns, flower garlands, or the daily application of expensive sandalwood paste.
Everyone was clean, beautifully dressed, and wearing heavy gold jewelry. There was literally no poverty.
And we have to note that in this epic, material wealth is intrinsically linked to moral and social cleanliness.
Yes.
Valmiki states that in Ayodhya, you simply could not find anyone who was greedy, cruel, foolish, or atheistic.
Everyone ate pure food, practiced deep self-control, and lived a long, happy life with their families.
It really is painted as a flawless society.
But as an observer, it's important to look at the underlying engine of this utopia. How exactly did this society function?
That is the big question.
The translation outlines a highly structured, rigid social order, where this harmony is achieved through very strict adherence to duty.
Yes, the social hierarchy, the Varna system, is clearly defined and rigidly followed in this vision of the city.
The Brahmins, the priestly class, were constantly engaged in their specific rituals, keeping their senses under tight control.
And notably, it mentions they strictly avoided accepting inappropriate charity, maintaining their purity.
The Kshatriyas, the warrior class, were entirely dedicated to the protection of the realm.
The Vaishyas, the merchant and agricultural class, followed the lead of the Kshatriyas in supporting the economy.
And the Shudras, the laboring class, served the other three while performing their own specific duties.
Exactly.
And to be clear, we're just impartially reporting what the blueprints of the source material lay out here.
Right.
In the vision of this ancient text, the perfection of Ayodhya relies entirely on everyone playing their specific assigned role without any deviation.
The Kshatriyas look to the Brahmins, the Vaishyas obey the Kshatriyas, and so on.
It is an enormous civic machine where every single gear knows exactly how and where it is supposed to turn, and it never tries to be a different gear.
This raises an important question for you, the listener, to ponder.
What's that?
This ancient epic equates ultimate societal happiness and utopian perfection, not just with material wealth or individual liberty, but with extreme discipline, physical and moral cleanliness, and everyone staying firmly in their designated lane.
The complete and total absence of friction seems to be the ultimate goal of their civilization.
And they spared absolutely no expense in outfitting this frictionless society.
Moving into the rest of Sarga 6, we get what I like to call the ancient military bestiary.
Yes, the animals.
Because the logistics and resources of this city were incredibly vast, especially when it came to their animals.
The cavalry alone is a marvel. Their war horses were sourced from the absolute best regions of the known world at the time.
The epic lists exotic steeds brought in from Cambodia, Valika, Vanayu, and regions near the Sindhu River.
Let's contextualize that for a second. Where exactly are those regions on a modern map?
Good point.
By mentioning regions like Cambodia and Valika, which correlate roughly to modern-day Afghanistan, Central Asia, and the broader Indus Valley, The epic is showing us something vital.
It proves that Ayodhya wasn't an isolated, walled-off hermit kingdom.
Exactly. It sat at the center of a massive, sprawling global trade network. They were importing the finest assets from thousands of miles away.
But the real heavy armor of the ancient world wasn't the horse. It was the war elephant.
Oh, absolutely.
And the taxonomy the text provides for Ayodhya's elephants is intensely specific.
They weren't just going into the woods and rounding up wild animals. This was a highly categorized, multi-generational breeding program.
They sourced the foundation of their herds, these mountain-sized beasts, from the Vindhya and Himalayan mountain ranges.
And the translation goes into remarkable detail, explicitly naming 3 pure biological breeds of elephants.
The Bhadra, the Mandra, and the Riga.
And they didn't stop at pure breeds.
No, they intentionally created complex crossbreeds to engineer the perfect war machine.
The text lists the specific combinations, mixing a Bhadra and a Mandra, or a Bhadra and a Mriga, or a Mriga and a Mandra.
This sounds exactly like ancient military biological R&D.
That is exactly what it is. Think about the immense administrative feat required to track lineages, manage massive temperamental beasts over decades, and selectively breed them for specific combat traits.
It's astounding.
It shows a level of scientific and logistical sophistication that speaks to the absolute mastery the rulers of Ayodhya had over their environment.
But an operation like that, 100-mile city, global trade routes, biological R&D, and an army of superhuman warriors, it doesn't run itself.
Not even with a king as powerful as Dasharatha.
That brings us to Sarg 7, which is entirely dedicated to the masterminds operating behind the curtain,
Dasharatha's cabinet.
the administration.
Sarg 7 introduces us to the 8 core ministers who manage this vast, complex empire day to day.
Their names are permanently recorded as Srishti, Jayanta, Vijaya, Saratra, Rashtrapradana, Akopa, Dharmapala, and finally, Sumantra.
And Sumantra is specifically noted as being a master of the Arthashastra.
For those who might not know, what exactly is the Arthashastra?
The Arthashastra is essentially the ancient Indian treatise on statecraft, economic policy, and military strategy.
Think of it as a masterclass in political science and economics.
Exactly. So you have a minister entirely dedicated to the pragmatic, hard math of running a kingdom.
But alongside these political and administrative heavyweights, the king was guided by supreme spiritual advisors.
Primarily the great sages Mashista and Vamadeva.
So you have the ultimate pragmatic economists sitting at the same table as the ultimate spiritual sages.
Every political or economic decision was being cross-checked to ensure it also aligned with cosmic and moral law, or dharma.
But what really stands out to me about these ministers isn't just their political acumen.
What is it?
It's their incredible emotional intelligence. The translation explicitly states that they can read people's inner thoughts and intentions simply by observing their physical gestures and microexpressions.
They were master psychologists as well as administrators?
It's similar to modern behavioral analysis used by high-stakes negotiators.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of how they governed, that psychological insight was essential.
They didn't just guess what was happening in their kingdom.
No, they maintained a vast, intricate spy network.
They essentially had an ancient CIA running parallel to their government.
Precisely. They knew exactly what their own citizens were doing, and more importantly, they knew exactly what rival kings were doing.
What they had done in the past or were secretly planning to do in the future.
They weren't just sitting in those gem-studded palaces hoping for the best or relying on their high walls.
They were proactively managing the state through intense intelligence gathering.
And because they possessed perfect information, they knew exactly when to utilize diplomacy in peace and exactly when it was necessary to unleash those Maharathi warriors and armored elephants.
But their most striking attribute, the one Valmiki emphasizes most heavily in this section, is their absolute, uncompromising dedication to justice.
They were so deeply committed to the law and the moral order that the text states they would not hesitate to punish their own sons if they committed a crime.
Think about the level of integrity that requires, especially in an era of absolute royal privilege.
It's unheard of.
A high-ranking minister throwing his own kid in a dungeon is the ultimate proof of an incorruptible system.
There was zero nepotism, zero corruption.
If you broke the law, you faced the consequences, regardless of your bloodline.
And this fairness extended to how they funded this massive utopia as well.
Yes, the taxation system is described as perfectly ethical.
They filled the massive royal treasury without ever harassing the citizens or causing them financial distress.
They gathered wealth justly, and they applied punishments that were exactly proportionate to the crime.
Perfectly balancing the strength of the state with gentleness toward the people.
So what does this all mean?
When you put it all together, the flawless urban planning, the immense wealth, the highly ethical warriors, and these incorruptible ministers, the Ramayana is presenting a blueprint of a society where perfect leadership creates a completely frictionless world.
The ministers and the king operate in such perfect, calibrated harmony that the entire massive city of Ayodhya hums along without a single note of discord.
There are zero liars, zero adulterers, and zero criminals.
It is a breathtaking, awe-inspiring blueprint.
It asks you to look critically at our modern world, at our contemporary institutions and urban design.
Do we today balance our immense technological power and unimaginable wealth with the kind of intense ethical restraint, incorruptible justice, and deep sense of duty described in Ayodhya?
It is definitely something to think about the next time you read the news or look at how modern cities are run.
It is a high bar, perhaps an impossibly high one for our real world, but that is exactly the purpose of an epic like this.
To show us the absolute, uncompromising ideal so we have something to aim for.
And it certainly gives us an incredible window into what ancient thinkers valued most in a civilization.
It really does.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the blueprint of Ayodhya.
But before you go, we want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over.
We've spent this entire time talking about how the text goes to incredible lengths to establish Ayodhya as physically unconquerable from the outside.
It is protected by a massive moat, heavy artillery, perfect laws, superhuman warriors, and brilliant, infallible ministers.
But consider this. If a society is this deeply entrenched in flawless rules, total external harmony, and absolute military security, how vulnerable does it actually become to an internal intimate disruption?
If no outside army, no matter how vast or well-equipped, can breach the high walls of Ayodhya, could a simple emotional conflict, a moment of human weakness, or a quiet family promise made behind closed doors be the only thing capable of bringing the perfect city to its knees?
Something for you to explore on your own. Thanks for joining us and keep diving deep.
Jai Shri Ram.